Welcome to KTN News,
live from Alaska,
where the truth is revealed. 9/11. 16 years ago, on September 11, 2001.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, Plane 1 hit the North Tower, killing 98 passengers and 5 hijackers.
And Plane 2 hit the South Tower, killing 56 and 5 hijackers.
And Plane 3 hit the Pentagon, killing 125 people and 5 hijackers.
And Plane 4 crashed into a field, killing 40 passengers and 5 hijacks.
8 to 12,000 escaped.
2,977 people died. Here are a couple of interviews. KTN News went out to ask a couple of people on their perspective on 9/11.
Have you ever been to the Twin Towers?
I did. Back in 2010 when I lived in New York, we went down and they were just building the memorial. So all they had were 2 gigantic holes in the ground where they were going to put the memorial.
How has it affected you?
Well, it's affected my family because my husband has had to go fight against these guys a couple of times. It's affected my world because now my children have to know a world where there's extreme hate. And for me, it gives me another opportunity to pray for people that I don't necessarily agree with, and hopefully, somehow show the love of Jesus through that.
How did it affect you and your family?
Well, as a military family, I'm sure it has affected us since that it's the beginning of all the deployments and everything. So that's definitely what has affected us, is the fact that the whole entire military has changed since then in the past 17 years.
How old were you when the attack happened?
I was 11 years old.
What do you remember?
I remember I was in bed and my older sister was getting ready for school, and I woke up to her telling my parents about what happened. She had heard about it on the radio. And when I woke up, they had the TV on, and it was just a picture of New York City, the Twin Towers. And I think that was before the second plane had crashed into the towers. And I remember, I think that was actually when I was introduced to terrorism. So definitely changed a lot. I remember later that day, my mom and I went out to town and just not hearing any airplanes, and it was just such a quiet day. That's probably my biggest memory.
Thank you for your time. How old were you when September 11th happened?
I was 17.
How did your country respond to 9/11?
So in stark contrast to the confusion that I felt and the threatening feeling that I felt, it was very, very reassuring. I felt, of course there's the feeling of emptiness and how do we even start, where do you start from here? But the first responders were the first reports coming out of how many first responders, how many firemen and policemen and women and our country's military branches came together and helped to overcome this just in the immediate aftermath. And then slowly as the weeks and months started to go, there were, organizations and just community helpers coming out, and regular everyday civilians coming out and pulling together and making different groups, and churches that were using their church as a safe haven for these people who were maybe misplaced or without their family members. They still weren't getting the reports, were they safe? And so it was a very that feeling of community, and we are going to be okay, and we are going to make it through this. So it was a great feeling in that way.
What do you remember about that day?
Well, the big thing I remember is I think I was watching Regis and Kathy Lee at the time, and they broke in for the news and said that they didn't know what had happened, but that a plane had crashed into one of the Twin Towers. And then as they kept on showing the live shots, they showed the building on fire, and then they actually panned out and you could see another plane coming. And then the second plane hit the second tower, and then they kept it live and then about 45 minutes later you saw the first building collapse, and then you saw the second building collapse. And at the time, now they've edited all that footage, but at the time you could see the horror and the tragedy. Like nowadays you won't see the planes actually hitting the Twin Towers anymore because they don't show that footage on the news. But back then, that's all they showed over and over and over again was the actual scene of the plane. The first plane had already hit the Twin Towers, and they actually panned out and you could see the second plane coming in and going to hit the Twin Towers. And now knowing what we know, knowing that it was hijacked and knowing that all those people knew that they were flying to their certain death, they could see the building coming. It's just a horrible thing to have seen.
The interview. Where were you when this happened?
I was a sophomore in college, and I was in school in Idaho, in Nampa, Idaho. And I was a music assistant, and we got the news as I was coming into class for the morning to the music building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How did it change the military?
Well, the military in the 90s, when we were first, my husband and I were married in 93, so we were first married and we were in the military. It was all about, it was a lot more about show, about how things were supposed to look. The Army was supposed to look like it was doing something, but then after 9/11, the Army had to actually do something. And so then once the Army is at war, it's a whole different thing than the Army at peace, an extended long peace like we had there. Go.
And thank you for your time.
What do you remember about that day?
And I remember thinking, man, that's quite an accident. How do you not see a building? And then when the second plane hit, it was very threatening. It was a threatening feeling, like now we're not safe. Someone has threatened our country. Someone has threatened our safety. It was very confusing. And of course, I was 17, so I'm thinking, what do we do from here? What do we do as a country? What do I do? What can, and then just minute by minute, different reports were coming out. There were other planes, and now the Pentagon has been hit, and there's a plane down in this field, and I just thought, how could such evil happen, in such a time, in such a huge number? Because usually when you hear, there's a bombing here or there, but something like planes into a building was very hard for me to think, how did they even, why would they pull it off? How did they pull it off? How did this go under the radar? Nobody caught any signs of this. I was very confused.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
But that is not the only thing that has been in our prayers this week.
Worst flooding in decades. Bangladesh, India, and Nepal are still suffering from a terrible flood.
And they're running out of food and clean water.
24 million people are affected by this flood.
And the situation is going from bad to worse.
1,000 people were killed.
Now we're going to tell you a little bit about the aftermath of Hurricane Irma. It was a Category 4 hurricane, and a bridge was washed down to the lower Keys.
6 people died. 15 million people lost their homes.
People expected much loss.
And 40% are lacking electricity. There are huge floods and trees everywhere.
356 people were rescued.
Hurricane Irma also hit Haiti. Haiti was hit with a Category 5 hurricane. There were winds of 180 miles per hour.
36 people died. Most of all the buildings were damaged or destroyed on the island.
60% of the people in Haiti are homeless now.
95% of the entire island was destroyed.
Last October, Hurricane Matthew hit Haiti. Now in September, Irma came. They finally finished all their work from the damage of Matthew, and now Hurricane Irma came and destroyed it all again. Now Haiti is left to rebuild everything again. That's all we had today.
See you next week, same channel, same time.
Reporting from the Love Alaska studio.
KTN News, counting it all joy.